Thank you for tuning in to Grieving Voices. Today, I'm happy to bring to you Denise Dielwart. She has experienced a profound loss firsthand after the sudden passing of her husband. After trying many methods that were not working, Denise sought a path to healing that led to the creation of the Flow Grief Release Method, a transformative approach to moving through grief with grace and ease. Denise's journey from the depths of despair to rediscovering joy inspired her to help others. With over 15 years of experience, she has guided thousands to reclaim their lives from grief using her unique flow method that dramatically shortens the healing process from years to months. Denise's groundbreaking approach challenges the traditional stages of grief, the waiting for time, offering a lifeline for those who feel stuck and hopeless. Her flow method isn't just about coping, it's about transforming your life and rediscovering joy in a way that's both profound and lasting. We are on the same mission, my friends, so thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. It's an absolute honor to be here today and to be able to share how we do move forward from grief.
Because it is possible, like we were talking just before we hit record.
Yes.
But we will get to that topic. Where I want to start, though, is really where this all started 15 years ago.
Well, 15 years ago, as you know, I'm in Australia. So 15 years ago, my husband basically went to work and didn't come home. He was 51. He was 55. We were just settling into our new life because we got married young and the kids had all moved out and we were on 8 acres. It was our forever home that we built, 8 acres. We had a motorbike track out the back for the boys because I've got 9 grandsons. And yeah, and then he woke up one morning, said goodbye. It was Monday morning, goodbye, see you. And he never came home. He died of a blood clot. So there was no goodbyes. There was nothing. There was no time. He was healthy. And obviously that sent me into a complete, as I say, la la land, complete spin. But what I found was that after I sort of came around and you sort of come out of that fog and you start moving forward, I was seeing a therapist, I was seeing a psychologist who was just talking to me, tell me about it, tell me about it, tell me about it. And I wasn't getting any better. I wasn't feeling as though I was moving forward. And I knew that he wouldn't want to see me crying for the rest of my life. You know, sitting there going, oh my God, look what happened to me. I'm so sad, as I wouldn't have wanted it for him either. And that's when I sort of went, okay, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I kept asking that question, what do I do? How do I heal? Now, bear in mind, this was 15 years ago, before Facebook and everything and the groups, you know, was there. There wasn't that support. And I knew, though, instinctively as well, that I needed to heal me. I needed to heal. And that's when my journey started. And I started looking within. I started healing myself. And, you know, the profound change was me changing my focus from not just to the, you know, the moment that he died, but to who am I? Who am I now? That was my biggest question as a widow. You know, for women, we so taught to do everything for everybody else, but when it comes to ourselves, we lose ourselves in our marriage or our partnership. We lose our identity. I got married at 19, 20, turning 20. Had the kids young. I was a mother. I was a wife. I fell into that role. And then, of course, when that role gets taken away, it was like, well, who am I? I remember breaking down one night, and I had breaking down with wine. I will admit it. I had one wine, then I had another one, and I had one wine, and I sat there crying. And I thought, Denise, who are you? At 51, you don't even know who you are.
I think a
I
lot of
mean,
people listening feel that way.
yeah,
A lot
yeah,
of people just don't know who they are. And I think
no,
it often this happens when our lives are flipped upside down and we start asking ourselves, we just don't ask ourselves those deeper questions.
no, we
So
don't.
we're forced to usually.
Yeah, because when life is happening, and we, I mean, no marriage, and I say this to all the widows I've worked with, and I mainly work with widows. I work with everybody, but my passion is widows, because as a widow, regardless of age, we're the most misunderstood death out there. People don't understand what it's like to lose a husband. It's a very special, it's a different loss, because each loss is different. So if you lose a child, it's a different loss to losing a husband or a life partner. Losing a life partner is you lose not just that person, but you lose your whole life. You have to start over. You have to start reimagining your new life, because that's what it is. It's a new life. Your life doesn't just carry on. You don't just go, okay, well, I've got, so many people say or think that you just get over it. You never get over it. You never get over it. That's such a cliche. Oh, aren't you over it yet? Over what?
Did your kids tell you that or say that to you?
My kids never told me that, but a lot of friends would say to me, gosh, Denise, it's been 6 months. Aren't you over it yet?
How long were you going to therapy, and how long from the time when you were going to therapy till when you realized, okay, this isn't working for me. I need to figure this out,
Yeah.
obviously on my own. How much time had
It was
passed?
about 6 months. About 6 months.
That's still pretty fresh and new.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I was so determined for Martin's sake, not for my sake, but for Martin's sake, my husband's sake, to continue living, because I knew that he wouldn't want me to die with him. So that was my drive, was that I wanted to heal as quickly as possible, heal myself, not forget about him or forget about the life we had together, but to heal me. Plus I had my adult kids, and I had the grandchildren, and we want to be strong, we want to put on a face, but I wanted to genuinely find joy again, not just pretend and put the mask on, and I call the happy mask, the I'm okay mask. How are you? I'm okay. So it was when I was sitting with my therapist, my psychologist, and I said to her, I said, how long am I going to be feeling like this? And she looked at me shocked, and she said to me, Denise, she said, you've lost your husband. It's only been 6 months. You're going to be like this for the next 5 to 7 years.
Not good advice.
And it was
Not very
in that
hopeful, is
moment.
it?
And it was in that moment, but it was great advice, not thinking back now, because it was in that moment on the way home. I used some choice 4-letter words to my steering wheel about, I'm not going to stay like this. There's no way that I'm going to stay like this. Who the hell does she think she is? Blah, 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 blah. Expletive, 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 insert, insert, insert. But that was my turning point, when it was like, okay, she's not going to help me. Because what therapy is talk therapy. And we can't talk our way out of grief. We have to take action.
Amen. Amen. I facilitate, it's a program called the Grief Recovery Method, and it is all action, action,
Yeah,
action, action. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I do want to mention one thing that you said, and then I will come back to the action piece. But you had touched on it a little bit about the grief of losing a child, which I cannot imagine. I was narrowly close to losing my son. I mean, it
yeah,
was not that he almost died, but if the stars would have aligned differently, he very well could have.
yeah,
So I was faced with that, but And that's not even to compare people who have lost a child. I just cannot imagine. But when you said about how different it is to losing a spouse, I've been married now. I've been with my husband for over 20 years. And the difference is with the child and the spouse is like it's the children grow up and they leave, right? Like you're their caretaker for 18 years, generally speaking. Like most children leave, go to college, and want to get out of the house because they don't want to listen to mom's nagging anymore, right? So, but your spouse is very much still an integral part of your life on the daily once the kids are gone, right?
That's right.
I just interviewed someone, a gentleman who lost his wife of 51 years.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
when you're so, the two become one, right? You just become so ingrained in each other's daily lives. It's almost like, what do you do when that person's no longer there? When, if you took walks together, if you had morning coffee together, there were, so many of our behaviors are adjusted around who we're with, who we're spending our time with.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so spot on. And that's why I specialized in widows. And so many people say to me, why not men? Well, I'm not a man. I'm a widow. I know what I went through. Men grieve differently. Yes, I can help you, but it's not, I have helped men. I have helped people that have lost a child. But for a widow, that's my journey. So I can help you. I know what I went through and I know what it takes. And like you said, you said it's the little things. It's like Martin used to bring me a cup of coffee in bed every morning. He'd get up, he'd make coffee. And suddenly it wasn't there. And you're lying in bed and you're going, oh, well, I suppose I have to make my own coffee.
What I wouldn't give for a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brought to
So
me by Martin. Yeah.
it's not the big things. And this is why I say it's the most misunderstood grief is losing a spouse. Because it's not the big things, it's the little things. I remember I was outside with the pool and I had to bend down and I had to get into the basket to clean it all out. Now that was a job, the pool was his job. I didn't worry about that. And of course the basket got stuck and I couldn't get it out. And I remember just yelling up at the sky and going, oh, why did you die? Why did you do this to me? Now I've got to do what you did. And it's not an anger that you're angry with them, it's frustration. The 5 stages of grief, you go through anger. No, you go through frustrated. You get, oh, I've got to do this now myself. So you got to learn new skills. You got to take on the mowing and stuff that he used to do. Even taking out the garbage, little things like that.
So many of the widows that I've spoken with too didn't weren't involved with the finances.
That's huge.
So
That
when
is
their
huge.
spouse left, they had or passed away, or they had no clue.
Yeah.
And that's very overwhelming, I imagine.
Yeah, that is huge. A lot of my clients, I was lucky in that I was in my previous life, I was a bookkeeper, tax agent.
Mm.
So Martin and I had our own business for years and years and years. And then he started working from home and I started working from home. So we were just, floating along, getting on. And the gift in that is that when he died, I just carried on with the finances because I handled all the finances.
That's a
At
huge
the
stressor yeah, that's a huge stressor. But even still, you still have all the significant others or spouses accounts and retirement and social media, and any advice for those types of things, like those logistical type things. Like, I know you just got to do it, but
first thing is to not get overwhelmed. Because when your spouse dies, suddenly the bank is on you. Okay, well, we want to freeze this and we want to do this, and you can't do this and you can't do that because they're not there. And my husband, Martin, didn't have a will because we were in the process of setting all of that up. So he died without a will. So for me, I took the path of least resistance. I told the least people possible until I moved funds and moved money and did stuff. Because I knew that the minute the bank got wind of it, they would have just frozen everything.
Mm.
You know, even to his frequent flyer points, he's on his credit card, I knew that they would be taken away. So I started transferring them over to me. So it's really thinking outside of the box when it's not crumbling and it's not getting overwhelmed. Because it's just finance. And I guess with my bookkeeping background, I knew how to think practically, okay, and logically, okay, what do I have to do here? What do I have to do there? A lot of my clients, I help a lot of my clients walk through that maze because it is a maze. And if you've never had to worry about finances before, if you've never had to worry about paying an electricity bill, for example, because that was all taken care of, and to be suddenly thrust into this whole world of finances, it's overwhelming. And that's where a lot of widows get stuck.
It sounds like to me like there's an opportunity there for you to create some sort of course
Yeah.
for within
Yeah.
your community,
Yeah.
maybe to put on your website or something to help people kind of, you can't, this saying has been like on the forefront of my mind lately just because of a big project I've been working on, but you can't eat an elephant in one bite, right? Like you just got
That's
to
right.
take it little by little. And so I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
to have someone guiding you through, okay, just focus on just these two things today, just get these two things done. Tomorrow's another
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. And then even if you can't do those, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be done today. Very often, financial advisors, solicitors, lawyers, they'll all try and pressurize you because they're on their timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But create your own timeline. Just if you can't handle it, because remember too, you've got widow's fog. I didn't know there was such a thing as widow's fog. Because until I actually went through it myself. My kids thought, my daughter said to me, Mum, you've told us that already. You've said that. And I said, when? She said, about 5 minutes ago. She said to me, I think you're getting Alzheimer's. You're losing your mind. I lost my car keys for about 3 months. 3 months. I was using my spare keys. I was still bookkeeping at Google. It was just after Martin passed away, and I had to go and see a client, and I was all dressed up and had my laptop and everything. And I looked at our bird. We had a parrot, a pink and grey parrot, and I thought, oh, it's going to be a hot, hot day in the 90-degree day today. I better leave some water for him. So I filled up his water bowl, checked his food, said goodbye to him, and where are my keys? I couldn't find my keys, my sunglasses and my keys. And I looked and it's getting later and later and later, and I can't find my keys. So eventually I grabbed the spare key and I thought, okay, I'll just take the spare key and go. See this client. Came back, I wonder what happened to my keys. Anyway, I got the spare key, didn't think about it. And about 3 months later, I was watching the TV, and on top of the TV were my keys and my sunglasses.
And that's what happens when
But
in
it's
grief. Yeah,
normal.
it's
It is
normal.
it is normal. So for people to go, well, I'm losing my mind. No,
Mhm.
you're not. It's just your body's way of protecting you. And that's why in the initial stages, there's so much paperwork to be done, especially in a widow's case. There's so much paperwork to be done. There's the the will, there's the kids that might be fighting about, why didn't this one leave me that, and that one leave me that, and in blended, I've had ladies and that have got a blended family, so it could be their second marriage. So the kids from the first marriage don't want her to have anything.
Mm.
I've had widows and widow clients that the kids have kicked her out of the house that she's been in for 20 years. And that's another grief and another layer in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then there's the other scenarios where, and it's I didn't realize how common it was until I started this work, is that the woman finds out after her husband dies that he's been having affairs. So it's the betrayal that they've got to deal with, but they've got nobody to yell and scream at and argue with about it because he's gone.
What do you do with all of those emotions and feelings? And
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's why I go back to, it's the most misunderstood, because there's very often there's a lot of skeletons in the cupboard because nobody really wants to mention them. They find all this stuff out about their husband when he dies. They might find that he, it might not be an affair, but when they're doing the estate and winding everything up, all of a sudden he's got a loan here and he's got a loan there, and especially if they haven't been involved in the finances. So it's messy. It's really messy. And
So,
if they don't have the right support and they're just going to see a talk therapist and they're going to just talk about how you're feeling, nothing's going to change.
and that's what I've found too in a lot of support groups, of women, widows or parents who've lost children, or it doesn't matter the context of the support group, but that's what you're doing. You're going to this circle of people. Yes, you're connecting with other people with similar losses, which is great, but at the same time, you're going to listen to other people's story again and again and again. And you're going to be telling your story again and again and again. And there's no action taken. And you leave feeling maybe a little better for an hour, but those people, you say goodbye, and a couple days later, you're back to where you were until the next meeting. It's like it's a pacifier, really,
It is
unless you're
totally.
taking action.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a beautiful client of mine, went to grief share 5 times. And because she's such a good client of mine, I eventually said to her, says, what didn't you understand the first time? And she laughed. She said to me, looking back now, I thought that maybe if I go this time, it'll be different. Or maybe I missed something. And I said, you went 5 times because it doesn't work.
Well, and think about your state of mind when you're going. You think you're going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe there's a little bit of comfort that you're feeling in being in circle with other people who also feel like they're going a little crazy, but
Yeah.
at the same time, nobody's progressing forward.
No, no.
That's not an environment conducive of healing, to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, and me too, in my opinion too. And that's why, I became a life coach after Martin died. Now, I became a life coach because, remember, I was in the bookkeeping world. So I thought, well, I'll become a life coach to heal myself. I'll get all the tools, and then I can become a business coach. That was my dream. That was my path forward. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be working with widows and grief. That just was not on my radar until it was. It was like, okay. So many people said to me, you've got to work with widows, Denise. You've healed so quickly. You've got to, you've got to share. You've got to do this work. And I really rejected it. I went, no, 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 I'm fine. No, no, no. Until I eventually said, you know what? If I'm meant to work with widows, universe, God, show me the way. and it all unfolded. And that's where I am today.
So what did that action look like for you?
So the first thing I did was open up, it was a Facebook group. I'm going to just open up because, I'm sitting here in Australia and I'm thinking, I want to work around the world. I don't want to just be working the one-on-one, come to my office and I'll help you. And I remember sitting there at the front of my computer, and it was early on, before any Facebook groups were what they are now. I thought, okay, I'll start a Facebook group. And it was me and another friend of mine in South Africa. There was two of us. She had just lost her husband, who was a school friend of my husband. So there was quite a tight-knit bond there. And it was just her and me in this group. And I thought, okay. So I just started posting in the group, and the group started growing. And that's how I started. I started my program. I reverse engineered how I healed myself. And that's when the flow method, when I created the flow method. And the flow method is an acronym for feel, let go, overcome, and become whole. Because we have to feel our emotions. And that was what the coaching, learning to become a coach, a life coach, was I learned how to feel. Go within, deep within. And the added bonus is that I had people practicing on me, and I was practicing on other people.
So what does that look like?
So we used to have our triads. We used to have, to share our stories, but it was always, that's your story. Now let's get to what's beneath that. And that's the key to grief, because grief is not, I remember my teacher, or my instructor, Sharon, saying at the time, you cannot coach grief. And I thought, why can't you coach grief? And now coaching grief for all these years, and now teaching it, because I've got my academy as well, the Academy of Transformational Grief Coaching. Grief is a different way that you approach people to life coaching. As a life coach, people come to you, or you see a life coach because you want to improve your life. You're already on that path. However, when somebody comes to you in grief, all they want to do is get better. They're unaware, 9 times out of 10, not always, but 9 times out of 10, they're unaware of the patterns and the programming and the beliefs on a subconscious level that's actually keeping them stuck and keeping them from moving forward. So it's only when we go beneath the surface, so it's in layers, it's like an onion. You've got to peel those layers of what is keeping you stuck.
I would actually challenge the idea too of life coaching, because people who go to life coaching, right, they think that the issue is, well, I'm not good with money, or how do I get better with money, or like they think the issue is more superficial.
Yeah.
When really their issue is probably grief, all these emotional communications that have had nowhere to go, because we
That's
all
right.
grieve something. And grief
Always.
is cumulative, and it's cumulatively negative. And if you were a child and you had to move a lot, you didn't have a lot of friends, or your parents divorced when you were young, pets that died, trauma that happened, like so much of the things that people are going to see a life coach for, they should probably actually be seeing someone like you or me for, to be
Exactly.
honest.
Spot on. Because even a boyfriend breakup.
Yes, it all stacks up.
There's unresolved trauma beneath the surface. And that's why we've got to feel. We've got to feel. But human nature is we don't want to feel, because it's too painful to feel. So we put on a mask. I'm okay. The I'm okay mask. I'm okay. I'm fine. How was your day? And then people say, oh, you're so strong. How are you coping? Because then we can let go. Now, I've had so many of my clients say, but I don't want to let go. I don't want to let go of anything. I want to just hold on. But it's not what we're letting go of. We're letting go of the pain. You're letting go of those emotions. You're not letting go of the person. You're not letting go of the love that you shared. You're letting go of that pain and the heartache.
So in your method, is it like a somatic experience, or what does that look like?
So to let go is where we start digging deeply. So the feeling part is if you're feeling your emotions, and it's always we can't feel those emotions on our own. The minute we start feeling an emotion, like I mentioned earlier, we shut down. We don't want to go there. So coaching and digging deep and going beneath the surface, unpeeling that is the feeling. What are you feeling? Really feeling? It's not just crying, it's not just sadness, but where's that emotion? What's coming up for you? Then the letting go is, okay, let's start now going deep. Let's let go of what you're feeling. But before we can let go is we need to go, where is that emotion? What is that? Can you verbalize it? Because very often we can't verbalize these emotions. And yeah, you have, as an example, a client might say, well, I'm feeling really lonely and isolated. And that's normal. That is totally normal. Okay, but we don't, I don't say to them, oh, that's normal. Do you feel it'll pass? No, it's like, okay, where are you feeling lonely and isolated? Why? And we start digging and going deep down until they can verbalize that emotion and they can feel that emotion and they can say, this is what I'm now letting go of. And that's a process that we go through. So, and then you can overcome because now you know what you're letting go of. And that's when you become whole. So that's the whole. I mean, it sounds so simple and easy to do, but it's not.
So how long does that process that you take people through?
As long as it takes, because
Okay.
sometimes there's delayed grief, sometimes there's some very deep traumatic childhood memories that come up, because that all plays into the letting go and the moving forward, because that sits on a subconscious level. That's on a subconscious level that we're not even aware of. And it's only when we do that deep inner work, but we have somebody walking with us to do that. Because we can only let go of what we know what to let go of, and we only know what we know. More than that, we don't know. So when you work with somebody, and how I help my clients is I take a helicopter view and I see their blind spots that they don't see. And walk them through that.
So how would you describe yourself before May 4th, 2009 versus how you would describe yourself today?
Before Martin passed away, I was, I wanted to say, a good little wife. That's the only way I can put it. Martin and I had a business together, but it was his business. I worked in that for free because he was my husband. After all, you've got to be there for your husband. Never got paid for it. We always used to laugh about that because, oh, you're my wife. Why would I pay you? That sort of banter that we used to have. And I accepted that because it was our business, but it wasn't. It was his business that I worked in. I was a people pleaser. I wanted to keep the peace. I put myself last. I often say, and there's a lot of my widow clients that have now become widow friends over the years that we've worked together. There's one lady in particular, and she said to me one day, she said, if Martin had to come through the door, what would you do? I said, he'd run away. He wouldn't want to be with the Denise that she is now, because I wouldn't put up with the stuff that I put up with in my marriage. And I'm not saying that my marriage was bad. I was a different person then to what I am now. And so of so many of my clients as well, because they're reimagining their life, they're reimagining who they are. They see the potential, they're finding themselves. And that's the key, is we can't stay that married widow, because that's a label.
Mm.
I'm a widow. It's a
Do you
label.
do you feel too that a lot of women find they want to stay in that box because of the unknown of changing? And then what'll happen if I do reinvent myself,
Yeah,
say, or just change, right? Like we are so accustomed to avoiding change. We hate change. We avoid it like the plague because there's so many unknowns that come with it. And so do you feel like in a lot of the work that you do with people, like women in particular, widows, that they're afraid to rock the boat of their lives? Like, because I've seen so many that once they decide to choose that for themselves and just surrender to whatever it is that is wanting to come out of them as a result of loss, um, they lose friendships, they lose connections with people, and that's more loss.
that's right. That's right. And that's why you need help. You need a process. You need something. Because the minute you start on your own inner journey and you start rediscovering who you are, your old life dies. It really does. And there's the fear, because we want it. That's where the letting go. You've got to let go of that imagined life that you were going to have. And in that life is all your friends, is all the friends that you had together, your together friends. And guess what happens is they disappear. They run away. I don't know where they are, where they go. They just disappear. And that's the hardest thing for a widow to accept, was the fact that what happened to Mary and John? We used to play bridge every Friday night, and suddenly they're not there anymore.
Or they're not, the widow isn't invited.
I'm not invited. Oh, look, they all went camping. And I wasn't invited to go along. But we always used to go camping together. Why wasn't I invited? And that's hurtful, but it's normal. We have to have the tools to be able to deal with that. And that is mindset. That's a different way of thinking, a different way of being. It's reimagining, it's reinventing. It really is reinventing your life. And that takes work. It takes courage. Not everybody has the courage to do that.
But everybody can find it.
Exactly. Exactly. The Wizard of Oz. I mean, let's use the Wizard of Oz as an example. You had the lion. I don't have courage. Yes, you do. You've just got to say yes to yourself. You've just got to say, yes, I can do this. I'm going to reach out for help. I can do this. And along the way, and so many of my clients over the years have gone, oh, I feel as though I've fallen down, I've fallen backwards. And yes, you do, because it's never just a straight line up. So you start at the bottom and you start going up, and then you might fall down a little bit, but you're falling down not to the level that you were at. You're falling down at a higher level. So it's like waves. You're going up and going up and going up. And you never arrive there. You always grow. It's having a growth mindset, being able to grow and go to the next level in your own personal growth, your own personal development. because the grief and your story is just that. It's what brought you to this point in your life. But what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about it? Because we've got choices. We can stay where we are and we can be the victim. And I hate using the word victim, but it is. I was a victim for a while. Look at me, poor me, my husband died. And so I put my big girl panties on and said, Denise, hang on, you got a whole life ahead of you. Do I miss him? I still miss him. It's 15 years later. Do I get angry with him? I still get angry with him when I have to do things. It's like, oh my God, it was so much easier when you were here. But that's not my life anymore.
I think one of the things that community, or being in community of people who are on the same mission, right, of growing and
Yeah.
evolving and reinventing themselves, one of the things that I think comes out of that too is you're in community with other people who have different problems than you. And so it's like, if we think about our problems, it's like, and then we hear somebody else's, it's like, and I've reminded myself of this so many times, and it's helpful. At the end of the day, I would sure take my problems home before I'd
Yeah.
want theirs,
Yeah,
because there's
absolutely.
always somebody who doesn't, it's not to say they have it worse than you, but it's like if you can think of yourself, put yourself in their shoes,
Yeah.
you're healthy. Yes, you're a widow, but if you're healthy and this other person now has a chronic illness, maybe they even had cancer themselves and their spouse died, I bet you would take your problems home with you instead of theirs.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Even financial. Some widows are left with nothing. Some widows are left with nothing. And it's so hard. And I find it really hard to say to these ladies that it's okay, it's just money. You can, regardless of your age, you can do something. You can create an income for yourself. So it really breaks my heart when I see these women with so much potential, and they just fold and say, well, I can't do anything. I'm going to live on benefits for the rest of my life, and I'm living with my son in his basement. I've got a client that started, she was living in the basement of her daughter's boyfriend. So her daughter was living with the boyfriend. She was living in the basement when we started working together. And she's now bought her own house because she put her big girl panties on. We worked together and we worked through what was keeping her stuck in the basement, and to not focus on the basement, but focus on getting a job. What can she do? Who would employ her? And as it turns out, she loves craft, she loves sewing, she loves all that. So she's working at the local casino in the uniform department, and she loves it. She's doing all the sewing repairs and all that. She loves it. But that enabled her to buy her own house, which she never saw, living in a basement.
And on the flip side of that, you could have all the money in the world and you could have 4 or 5 children, 3 children, however many children, or have a blended family, and everybody's fighting. And you have all of that stress and heartache.
Yeah,
And then your kids hate you because you didn't give them what they wanted and they
yeah,
aren't speaking to you anymore. I mean, this is the thing when I'm talking about other people's problems. It's like we would always take our own for the
yeah,
most part.
yeah. Always, always, always. Yeah, always. And our story is unique to us. Your story, your grief journey is unique to you. There's no cookie cutter way of doing it. You can't say, well, just do this and, like the 5 stages of grief. Goodness me. Go through the stage, then the stage. Now you're over here. No, grief is messy. It's all over the place. You can't just say, well, oh, okay, you're in the anger stage now.
There actually are no stages of grief.
I know. There
I
are
had
no
I
stages of grief. That's what I'm
actually
saying.
I
You
actually
know?
had Elizabeth Ross's son, Ken Ross, on my podcast.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yes. And we talked about that. And, her work was about people who have been diagnosed with a terminal illness.
that's right.
It was, but it is in pop culture, like
It's the golden,
nothing
I mean, here I
else.
am in Australia, and everybody, it's the golden standard for grief. And she wrote that book on death and dying in the 60s. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, but it's the 5 stages of grief. I've even heard people refer to going through COVID. It's like the 5 stages of grief. And oh my goodness. I was on a podcast or something, and somebody said, yeah, there's grieving in COVID, and, blah, blah, blah. I forget what it was. But all I remember them saying is, it's like we're going through the 5 stages of grief. We're getting angry and I'm thinking, wow, how misunderstood that is, because there are no stages. I mean, if you Google the 5 stages of grief, you can even come up with the 7 stages of grief.
Yeah, it's like I said, I think it's something that has really propelled her work, which is wonderful because her work was so much more than just the research that she
So
was doing.
much.
Like
Yeah.
her life, she led an incredible life.
Yeah.
And I'm not discounting anything that she did, and remarkable. I mean, the stories of working with, in the work that she did with
Yeah.
children, cancer patients, and um, she was a trendsetter. She was a trailblazer.
Yeah.
That I think that's what it is. I think she kind of blazed the trail of the deep emotional impact of big change,
Yeah.
loss of health, cancer diagnosis, right? Like, and yes, you're going to feel those things, but yeah. And I think, society, I think, is really just like, it gave them something to latch onto and run with. And I think that's kind of what happened. And they have
Yeah.
trademarked it because of course it's their business too, right? Like
Yeah.
it's, she has an empire of her own, and a legacy that is kind of been built with the 5 stages of grief. But yeah, I'll actually link to Ken Ross's episode in your show notes.
That'd be great. Yeah, it'd be great because, you know, um, when she wrote the 5 stages of grief, it was for people that were diagnosed with an illness.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you do go through all of that, the disbelief, the anger, and eventually get to acceptance. But when you actually die, when you've lost somebody, I don't think you ever, acceptance is a very strong word. You never accept the fact that they're gone or that they've died. You don't even learn to live with it. You heal yourself. You grow yourself. And you have them there walking next to you all the time. They're always there.
I think your point of perspective of it and your point of view and how you look at it changes.
Totally.
And that's when you know that you've done some healing, when you
Yeah.
can look at it differently.
And you're not crying when you think about them. You're not crying at the birthdays. You're not crying at the anniversaries. You're actually laughing. You know that you've healed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking back with love, not with pain.
And it's possible. And that's what we
Oh,
were kind of talking about before we started recording. Healing
absolutely.
is possible.
Yes, it
It,
is so
it's not
possible.
it's not like a cut, that you just cover with a band-aid, and it's eventually it's going to start oozing again, which it could, right? Like that wound can be opened again and again because life is going to continue to life.
Yeah,
You're always going to have another heartache. But
always.
what's your rebound? What's your bounce back?
Yeah,
You know, that's what improves when you work on yourself.
yeah. It's inner work. It's working on yourself. It's having a growth mindset. And oh yeah, you got a growth mindset. But a growth mindset, there's two mindsets. You can either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. when you've got a growth mindset, and I would say both you and I have got a growth mindset, because it's not, we don't just go, well, that's who I am and that's what I do. That's having a fixed mindset. It's just what it is. I'm a widow. I've lost my child, whatever, and having that stuck identity. Now, here's the thing. When we identify as let's take a widow, for example, I'm a widow, you've just boxed yourself into that identity. And why is it so easy to do after we lose our husbands is because we lose our identity. We're not a wife anymore. Oh, but that's right, I'm a widow now. So we put the widow hat on. And with that comes a lot of, I call it the puppy dog look. When people go, oh, I'm so sorry, and they get this puppy dog look. Oh, I didn't realize you were a widow. I'm still getting it 15 years later. Yeah, I've built a house recently, and I had a pool put in and all the rest of it. And all the tradespeople, the tradesmen that came here, the guys that came, would say, well, did you want to run it by your husband first? Or, no, I don't have a husband. Oh, you're divorced? No, I'm a widow. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't know. Well, of course you didn't know. You don't know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But even now you get that, because the word widow has got these dark, sad energies and connotations around it, that you're a widow and that you need to grieve for the rest of your life. It wasn't long ago when widows were wearing black. They had to wear black for like 12 months or something because they were in mourning. It was only a widow. So it wasn't that, it was like, what, maybe 100 years ago, 75, 100 years ago. And if you lost your husband, you dressed in black. The black stockings, you were just in black because you were in mourning.
I would love to go back in time and just see how, because I do think that the ancestors of the past knew how to grieve
Yeah,
better than
totally.
we do.
Yeah, yeah. They gave themselves permission to feel. They opted out of society and felt, but they could afford to do that. In today's world, we can't do that.
You got to put the suit right back on after 2 weeks and get out there and march into the
Soldier on.
streets.
Soldier on, girl. Just soldier on.
And you might get 10 days of bereavement time. You just might.
Yeah, if you're lucky. If you're lucky. And then it's like, well, why aren't you coming into work today? Or because no, well, your bereavement time's over.
Mm-hmm.
I've had widows that have had warnings after their 10 days of bereavement time that they're going to lose their job. And it's why a lot of them do the work, because they know that they have to keep their work. They have to keep the income coming in. And that's the main reason why they want to move forward. And then they realize that when we start working together, they get to all the other stuff that's beneath that. And suddenly they're starting businesses and they're doing other things that they never thought or dreamt of doing.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
can't see what's possible for ourselves when we are just continue to wear the veil of grief over our
no,
faces.
no, we can't. We can't. And it's okay to wear that veil for a while, but don't unpack and live there. It's when we unpack and live there that we take that identity on. We identify as that person.
So, what has your grief taught you?
It's taught me that there's a gift in grief, an absolute gift. And what is that gift? The gift is ourselves. It's our own personal healing. It's our own finding and rediscovering who we are. It's also taught me to be, as a widow, talking as a widow, it's taught me to be independent, but not that independent that I don't ask for help. That is such a hard thing for us women to do, is to ask somebody to help us, because we're so used to our husbands doing stuff that we didn't have to ask for. So it's taught me to actually put my hand up and say, I need help. Or pay somebody to do it for you. Don't try and do it on your own. So it's taught me to not be that strong person that just soldiers on. And that was something that in my own healing journey, it was a limiting belief that I didn't even know that I had. It was a bit deep-seated belief. I'm an only child, so I've got no siblings. I did ballet as a child, and my mother and my father both used to say to me, practice makes perfect. So just keep practicing, practice makes perfect. And then, of course, if I didn't get it quite right, or, I did in a Stepford or something, and I didn't get what I wanted to do, my mother would say, just soldier on, it's okay. Remember, practice makes perfect, just soldier on. It sounds innocent, doesn't it? It's mum encouraging me. But it was only when I went in deep within myself that I went, why do I push myself so much? Why does everything have to be just right?
Mm.
And then it was like, my aha moment was, oh my God, I'm still that little girl practicing to be perfect and soldiering on. That's the deep inner work. And that's what keeps us stuck in our grief. It keeps us stuck in our life, because it's not just the grief. The grief is grief is grief is grief. It's packed on. I lost my father, I lost my mother. But those griefs, I didn't even allow myself to grieve those losses.
How
Because
old were you when they passed?
my father died a week before my 18th birthday. He
Mm.
was 47.
Wow.
He had a massive stroke. So grieved him a bit. Everybody was saying, oh, he's so young. And I'm going, what? He's 47. He's old. Sort of look back now and I think, wow, he was so young. But so I lost my father, and then I lost my mother young as well. But I still had my family intact. I had Martin and I had the kids. Yes, I missed them. Yes, they were my parents. But somehow I just didn't feel it until Martin died. And then that was like, wow, because it's a different loss.
Well, and that's what happens with a deep loss, is that it brings up everything before it.
I know. I always say grief is like a magnifying glass. It just, oh, there's your life. And if we don't address what's coming up for us, we manifest disease. We manifest illness. Yeah, I had a beautiful client who found out after her husband passed away that he had an affair, that he was having an affair. And that all the money that she thought she had, he had spent on this other woman. I think he left her with, she had $4,000, and she was a school teacher. She had $4,000, and that was from her salary. That was it. But her drive to heal and to do it quickly was that she had breast cancer that was in remission. And she knew that if she went down that rabbit hole of stress and the grief and everything that comes with it, there's a chance that her breast cancer would come back. Plus, she was so angry with him, she wanted to kill him, although he was already dead. I remember her saying to me, if he wasn't dead, I would have killed him. And we laugh about that now, but it's again that betrayal and not being able to address that. She was 3 months into her grief journey when we started working. No, 4 weeks when we started working together. And that's early. That's really early.
But it's never too soon, and it's
It's
never
never too soon. And this is what, I have some people, Denise, is it too soon? Never too soon. Never too soon.
or too late.
No. Yeah, on the other spectrum, I've had a beautiful lady that was 15 years. She had seen, I think she had about 4 or 5 therapists. She even had a psychiatrist. She was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And within the first week of us working together, she went, oh my goodness, I'm not crying anymore. She was still crying after 15 years. And that's because we get stuck into a pattern. We have to break those patterns. And we can't break those patterns on our own if we don't know how, because
So
they're subconscious.
you did that through your life coaching certification, like as you were going through life coaching.
Yeah.
That's what you, okay.
Yeah. So I'm an NLP practitioner as well. So there's a lot of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. So a lot of NLP work that I do with my clients as well, because we've got to break state. We've got to get them to think differently. I help these ladies to actually see themselves and in a different way. We need to break the neural pathways. We have to scratch the record, because when we start going back and going back and going back over the same old thing, and that's why talk therapy doesn't work. Because when we repeat and repeat and repeat, we are building that neural pathway stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. We have to break that neural pathway. That's the electrical pathway in our brains. We have to break that, and we have to grow and start another one.
And it's possible.
It's possible. It is
New
more.
knowledge. Yep.
Yeah.
New
Yeah.
beliefs.
Yeah.
Yep. New
It
action.
is. Yeah. 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 It's just doing something. It's, everybody that's listening today, that's here, and I know for you and for me, it's one decision. We are ever only one decision away of a new life. Not 100 decisions, not overwhelming decisions. It's one decision.
Lay in decay or get up and reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
Those are the choices.
Yes. Yep. And it's a choice. We have choices. We choose. We choose what am I going to get out of bed today? Am I going to stay in bed? And if that's your one choice you do, well, what are you going to choose?
And what's the cost? What is it
Yeah.
costing you not
Yep.
to put yourself first in this
Yep.
way?
Yeah.
Better questions. We have to ask ourselves better questions.
Better questions. And what is it? When I say when I start working with my ladies, I say to them, what is it costing you? And I'm so glad you brought up the cost, because that's something that nobody thinks of. We only think of cost in a monetary sense, dollar sense, but there's such a massive cost to your health, to your relationships, to your whole life, everything. If you're not functioning properly, what is the cost? What is it costing you in your relationship with your family, your friends and family? What's the cost? It's massive.
Absolutely. We're on the same mission, my friend.
Yes, it's so
Help
good to
people
see.
heal.
Yes.
Where can people find you if they would love to connect with you and learn more?
So I have my website, which I think is the best place. It's flowgriefacademy.com. And that's where, they can book a call with me. There's a link there if they want to have a chat. To book a call with me, I offer a free, sometimes it's 60 minutes, sometimes it's 45 minutes, sometimes it's 5 minutes, depending on where. But just a free breakthrough call, grief breakthrough call, just to talk about where you are in your journey right now. What's keeping you stuck? And if I can help you, I can help you. If I can't, we've spent a good 45 minutes to an hour together, and you'll walk away with tools and an awareness of where you are in your journey.
And you have the podcast.
And I have my podcast, Grief Unlocked. Yes, I have my podcast. And yeah, I've also got my group. I've got a Facebook group as well. All the links are on my website. That's why I said my website is about the best to sort of to land there and have a look and to have a feel around there and click and so on. And of course, there's also the academy. So for those that feel that they want to learn how to become a grief coach, I've now got the Academy of Transformational Grief Coaching. So that's where you learn all the NLP techniques, you learn how to talk, you learn the flow method.
Wonderful. And I will put a link to your website in the show notes and to the Ken Ross episode that I mentioned, and to your Facebook group too. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
That'll be great. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Denise, and for being my guest today, and for this wonderful conversation. I'm always happy to have people on who are on the same mission as myself.
Yeah.
To bring awareness to grief, and that it's not just about death, but all these other things that we experience in our lives too, that, through the different client examples that you shared. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And it's such a point that you said it's not about grief, it's about life.
Yeah, because life is life.
Life is going to life, and we're still alive. So it's about life. It's about living.
And learning tools to make it the best that we possibly can in the time that we are given.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me on. It's been absolutely, can't wait for the podcast to come out and share it with my group as well. So because like you said, it's the awareness of we can heal and you can heal and move forward.
Absolutely. And remember, when you unleash your heart, you unleash your life. Much love.